Hi, my name's Gabe, and I'm a UX instructor here at Kenzie Academy. And I wanted to make a video that kind of walks through some of the tech tools that we use here at Kenzie. Things like just your Mac basics, as well as things like Slack, Google's G Suite, and Google Drive in general. So let's get started. Okay, so if you're setting up a new Mac, this is essentially what you're going to see, which is your desktop as soon as you've logged in. So a couple things you're just going to notice right off the bat. Up here, we call this a title bar, and this is dynamic, so it's going to change whenever we open a new application. Down here, this is called a dock, so this is where all of your favorite applications live. And so right off the bat, if you want something to not be there, then you can just remove it from the dock right here. Also, if we want a specific app to live in that dock, once it's opened, same thing, we can just option and then just keep it in the dock as well. So you might want to change some of your Mac's preferences as soon as you get it. So in order to do that, we're going to launch System Preferences. Now, everything pretty much lives in your Finder here. So your Finder window, you're going to be using it all the time. And you can come over here in your applications, and then you can actually see here is your system preferences. But when I'm launching applications, I actually don't like to launch them from the Finder. I like to do them from something on Mac called Spotlight. In fact, you can use this to launch anything, not just applications. You can use it to launch files and folders. But I primarily use it just to launch applications in general. And if you don't want to come up here and just have to click on this icon every time, something you can do is just press Command Spacebar, and that's going to launch your Spotlight. So from here, I can just launch my system preferences, and you'll notice as soon as I start typing, it starts auto-completing for me. So I don't have to finish typing system preferences. I can just type in the first couple characters, and it's going to launch it. So that's going to make your workload pretty fast when you're going through Mac. So from here, a couple things I like to personally change. If I come up here to general, this title bar, I don't like to look at it if I don't need it, and so I'm just going to automatically hide it. And so now when I hover over the top of my screen, it's going to show that title bar only when I need to see it. Same thing with this dock. I actually like it to live over here on the right. Complete preference. It's up to you where you want that to live. And then I personally don't like to look at it if I don't have to, so I'm going to automatically hide and show that as well. And those are just my personal preferences. So you can adjust all your Mac settings there from your system preferences as you choose. If you're coming from a Windows background, I highly recommend you go to your trackpad settings, go to your point and click tab here, and then where it says secondary click, definitely change that to click from the bottom right corner. If you're coming from a Windows PC environment, that's going to feel most natural to you as you're using your trackpad. Cool. So let's move on to some other things. Really quickly here, I'm just going to take a screenshot, and that is going to create a file here on my desktop. So some other key commands that we can use is things like copy and paste and cut and paste. So command copy is going to copy, and then command V is going to paste, and that works in your Finder and most of your applications when you're using text, things like that. That's pretty standard. So unlike PC where you're going to use Control C, Control V, it's going to be Command C and Command V on a Mac, as well as cut too. So I can't actually cut this, but if I had a block of text, so I'm just going to open up here a new text at a window, and I'm just going to type some text. So if I highlight over that, and I can cut and I can paste that. So that works with text, Command X. Cool. So other than that, a few things I want to talk about is just closing your applications and keeping your desktop clean. So let's talk about closing applications. So whenever you have an application open, you're always going to notice these three dots here at the top left corner. Red dot for closing the window, a yellow dot for minimizing the window, so you can kind of see that in action, and then a green, which is actually just going to take your window to full screen. Okay, and you can just hover up and click it again to take out of that. Now, a lot of people get confused and they think if I click this and close it, and I do not want to save this, that it actually closes the application, which is what happens in Windows, but in this case in Mac that doesn't happen. And so if I just click that X, I'm actually just closing that window. And so if I actually want to close out of the application itself, I have to come up here and quit the application. Now, I actually prefer just to use the key command, and that is Command Q. So on a Mac, whenever you want to close out of an application, just use Command Q. And I like to do that at the end of the day. If I'm not using the application, I'll just go to quit out of it, and that way it's not running in the background and taking up unnecessary CPU. Something that you might find helpful if you're navigating through the Finder, Command Delete will throw them in the trash. Now that doesn't permanently delete files, that just throws them in the bin. If you want things permanently erased, you have to empty your trash. Now keep in mind, it is a permanent action. So if you're emptying your trash, you are completely deleting the file. So just keep that in mind. But I like to throw things in the bin, and then if I accidentally need that item, then I can just go back and grab it out of there. So it's not permanent until you actually go through and empty the trash, so just remember that. But like I said, everything's pretty much here in the Finder. So if you come over here to the desktop, I like to keep a couple desktop folders, one for my personal projects, one for Kenzie Academy. I recommend, if you're a new student here, just creating a new project folder, which is just right click or secondary click, however you have that set up, and just naming a folder something that makes sense to you. And so in this case, it probably makes sense to have a Kenzie Academy folder and then all of your project folders living in there. That way you know where everything is. You can also have things in documents and so forth, which is living down here since mine's in iCloud. Okay, let's talk about Google Chrome here for a second. If you are a Kenzie Academy student, you're probably going to be using Chrome. The default browser on a Mac is Safari, so you'll want to launch Safari and then actually bury it by looking up Google Chrome. And so I can just kind of search here for Chrome, download now, and then that's going to take me to the download page for that. Once you've downloaded that, that's going to go straight to your downloads folder, as you can see here. And so you'll just need to double click on that DMG file, and that will open up and allow you to install. Now, once you've installed an application, the first thing it's going to ask you to do is drag it to the applications folder. So your back is not going to recognize an app as an application until it's actually in the applications folder, which is usually the very first prompt an application gives you after you've downloaded it, is like, hey, drag me to the applications folder. Otherwise, if you're downloading from the App Store, it's going to do it for you automatically. Now that we have Chrome open, let's go ahead and start diving into some of the Google Drive features. So I'm just going to navigate to this tab right here, which is going to show me my Google Drive. Cool thing about Google Drive is all of these files do not live on my machine unless they don't have to. So monotonous files, oftentimes like spreadsheets or Word documents or presentation documents, that kind of stuff that takes up space, I don't have to use my own computer storage for those types of files. I can just use Google Drive, and they will just kind of live in what's my Drive folder, which is living in the cloud. And the great thing about Google's applications is they all essentially live in the cloud, and you access them through the browser. So if you come over here, if you're used to something like Microsoft Word or Apple Pages, use Google Docs, you're going to access it in the browser and edit everything in the browser, which is really, really nice. So you don't have to have a specific application for a specific app in Google. And then if I come over here to slides, you can compare that to something like PowerPoint. And then Sheets is something similar to what you would find as Excel. And so all these applications live in your browser in the Google Drive cloud. So you don't have to take up space on your computer, which is really nice. Last Google product I wanted to talk about was Google Calendar. And so I have my calendar pulled up here, and easy thing about Google Calendar is if I want to make an event, I can just hover over where I want to add it and just give it a title. Now keep in mind, you want to make sure that your titles provide context for not just you, but anyone that could be joining into that calendar event. So if you need to schedule a meeting with someone, use Google Calendar and then send them an invite, and we'll kind of walk through what that looks like. So if I have a meeting and I'm talking about need help with CSS, so I would title that just to provide context, and then I can add Travis here. and that might be have a meeting where he's going to be helping me with some CSS here. Here I have an option to add a location. So at the Kenzie building, we have room names, and so what you can do is you could just say as a location a room name, and I happen to know that I work pretty close to a room name, Michelle. So I'm just going to add Michelle as the location, since that's the room we can meet in. But if I know I'm going to work with somebody at their desk, so I can just say at Travis's desk, and that just indicates, hey, let's just have this meeting at your desk. Now, some of you may be remote, and so for remote meetings, you could just use Google Hangouts. And so that's automatically going to be generated every time you create a new event. But at Kenzie, we actually like to use Dailyco. And so what's nice is I can literally type in a URL. Now, my personal Dailyco is, I want to add an HTTPS ://. That just indicates that it is a web link. And then my personal Dailyco is gabew.daily.co/Kenzie. And so if I just add that in the location, then the user will be able to just click straight on that to meet with me using this meeting link. Now, if I am using a Dailyco link, I highly recommend you remove the Hangouts meeting. Otherwise, it's going to be confusing. They might click on that instead of your Dailyco, and then you're not ssure who's where. It's just kind of a hot mess. One last thing, when you're creating an event, make sure the time's right. I recommend most meetings really shouldn't take more than 30 minutes. But down here in the description, just kind of provide context. So I might say need help with Flexbox, or I could say need help with so-and-so assignment. Okay, and so make sure when you're inviting somebody to a meeting, you're just giving them context on what's going on, and that's really what this description field here is for. You can also use this to link like a Google Documents or files or whatever. So highly recommend using this in a way that's going to make it as clear for anyone else that could be contributing to a Google Calendar event. So yeah, one last thing is if you're adding multiple people here via their email, you can actually turn off whether or not it's optional for them to attend the meeting. So that's really handy. Okay, one last thing I wanted to talk about here is Dailyco. So if you've been to our building, you've seen a lot of the cameras on top of our large TVs. So those Dailyco boxes are assigned to the specific room in which the camera and the TV is sitting in. So if I navigate to kenzie.daily.co, that / is basically whatever room I want to connect to. So if you know that your cohort is connecting specifically to, say, Randy, I can add / Randy and then just join straight from my computer. Otherwise, I recommend setting up a personal Dailyco so that you can give people a link that they can connect to whenever they want to meet with you. So for that, you're going to want to make sure you create a Dailyco account. Awesome. Let's talk about Slack now. So if you're a new student here at Kenzie, you've been added to the Kenzie Town Slack channel. And I highly recommend, if you're going to use Slack, to go ahead and download the Slack application to get the full experience. Now, I've opened up Slack. You'll notice I have some other workspaces here on my Slack. Do not worry about that. If you've never used Slack before, you're probably going to see something a little bit different here on the left. So let's talk about first thing we'll see when we open Slack, which is channels. And so channels have what we call channel topics. And so it's important that if you're joined into a channel, that you only discuss topics related to the channel topic. So for instance, if you want to talk about memes, use the memes channel. If you have a specific question regarding a lesson, use your cohort channel to talk about that question. And if you have something that you need to share with someone directly, use direct messages here. So you'll notice that some channels have a lock next to them indicating they're private. Those types of channels you can't be added to unless you're invited to. Otherwise, all these public channels here, you're welcome to search for and add yourself to. So if I'm posting to a Slack channel or a message here, well, as soon as I make a post, everyone can see that within that channel. And if someone were to reply to that specific post, the better thing to do instead of adding another post out of that is actually just go into the comments and reply here. Now, you might want everyone to see your reply, and for that case, it might be okay to go ahead and just reply directly to the channel. Otherwise, if you're going to reply to a specific post, use the comments and reply from there. A good practice is if somebody makes a post, they might benefit from seeing that you've read it, is just to reply with something like maybe a thumbs up. Just that shows them like, hey, I've read this and I'll get to it as soon as I can. Otherwise, if you're talking to a channel and you want to notify someone directly while you're in a channel, you can use the @ symbol and then just type in that person's name while you're talking to them on Slack. And that notifies them directly while you're posting that message. Now keep in mind, if you use @channel, that is going to notify everyone. Try to avoid ever using that unless it's an emergency. So don't @ the channel unless you absolutely want everyone to see your message. If you posted a message and you're worried that people didn't see it, you can actually go ahead and star that, and that'll just give people a second notification that says, hey, just make sure you respond to my message. So let's talk about some formatting here inside of Slack. And so I'm going to actually go ahead and delete some of these so they're not messy. And you can just navigate over here to the kebab style menu and then go ahead and click on delete message, and that'll delete it. So I'll go ahead and delete this so it doesn't show up here either. Cool. All right. So let's just say I have a list. Okay. If I just so if I just hit enter, that's going to immediately publish that post, but I want to indent. So if I have a list, what I can do is I can hold shift and then press return, and that'll take me down to a new line. And here I can start creating a list. So right here I can just say item 1, I can say item 2, and so forth. And it's going to continue on to that list. So if I want to write some code in Slack, which is very likely if you're an SE student, I can actually use backticks for that. So here I can just write some CSS if I want to. So I can just write text style nin, and that's going to post as an inline code message. Now, if I want to write an entire code block, what I can do is use 3 backticks and then write multiple lines of code here. So I can say write some more CSS here, and then just say color red. And when I post that, that's going to post the entire thing as a code block itself. Other things you might find useful is using bold. So if I want something to be bold, I could highlight over it and press Command B. And you notice it's going to put asterisks on either side of that. So when I post that, that item is now going to be bold. If I want it to be italicized, I can hover over it again and then just do Command I, and that's going to put underscores on either side of the word, and that will actually make it italic. So just some nice formatting tips when you're posting to Slack. Other than that, I would just remind you to be mindful of others as you're using Slack. So make sure that you're not adding people a ton, you're causing bloat inside of channels. Make sure if you're replying directly to a post, you're using comments instead of posting directly to the channel. And that's going to keep your work environments inside of Slack pretty clean and just help be mindful of others. So let's say you run into a situation where you need to present to the TVs here at Kenzie. So first thing you're going to do is make sure that you have the DailyCo Chrome extension installed. So once you have that installed, what you'll want to do is navigate to the DailyCo link in which you'll be presenting to. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and go to my link. Now, if you're in the same room as a DailyCo box, what you definitely don't want to do is select join from your computer. That's going to enable your mic as well as the mic that's enabled on the DailyCo box and cause this feedback loop to happen, and a horrible noise is going to start. So if you're in the same room as a DailyCo box, make sure you select control the DailyCo TV. You'll see a code at the bottom right of the TV where you can enter the code there. That's going to give you a prompt to share your window, and as soon as you do, you're ready to present. And so let's say we're over here on Google Slides. As soon as I'm ready, I can just start presenting and you're good to go. Awesome. That wraps up the Kenzie tool tips. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be on Slack or my email, gabe@kenzie.academy. Thanks.